Herkese merhaba. Projemizin 11.si olan aynı zamanda da son webinarı olma özelliği taşıyan EIC hızlandırıcı temalı KOBİ'ler için düzenlediğimiz web seminerimize hoş geldiniz. İsmim Kemal Onur Güngör. Avrupa Birliği ve Türkiye Cumhuriyeti tarafından finanse edilen Sözleşme Makamı Sanayi ve Teknoloji Bakanlığı olan ana yararlanıcısı ve etkinliğin en sahibi TÜBİTAK olan Ufuk 2020'de Türkiye Faz 2 projesi altındaki son webinarımızda sizleri ağırlamaktan memnuniyet duyuyoruz. Gördüğümüz kadarıyla katılım yeter sayısına ulaştık. Sizlere öncelikle dar vaktimizde bazılarınız çalışıyorken, bazılarınız başka işlerle meşgulken yayınımıza katıldığınız için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ben hemen etkinliğimizin değerli panelistlerini sizlerle tanıştırmak istiyorum. Öncelikle projemizin ana yararlanıcısı olan TÜBİTAK'tan Avrupa Yenilik Konseyi Ulusal İttifak Noktaları Sayın Tarık Şahin ve Sayın Merve Aydemir bizlerle beraberler. Yine projemizin teknik destek ekibinden KOBİ uzmanımız Philip Solden, projemizin destek ekibinde kilit uzman 2 ve takım lideri olarak görev yapan Odisea Spiroğlu, projemizin eğitim koordinatörlerinden Adam Antios Kumpis ve değerli KOBİ uzmanımız Sayın Sanem Yalçıntaş bugün bizlerle birlikte olacaklardır. Aynı zamanda proje destek ekibimizden Selin Doğrusöz hanımlar da yine bugün etkinlik süresince benimle beraber sizlere hem teknik hem de online lojistik herhangi bir hususta yardımcı olacağız. Etkinliğimizin sonunda EIC hızlandırıcı desteğine başvurma konusunda hepinizin daha ilgi bilgi sahibi olacağınızı temenni ederek ve daha güçlü başvurular yapacağınızı ümit ederek sözü TÜBİTAK'tan Sayın Tarık Şahin'e devretmek istiyorum. Tarık Bey, söz sizindir.
Teşekkür ederim Kemal Bey. Herkese merhaba. Hoş geldiniz. İsmim Tarık Şahin. TÜBİTAK'ta Uluslararası İşbirliği Daire Başkanlığı'nda Ufuk Avrupa Programı Ulusal Koordinasyon Ofisi'nde EIC programından sorumlu Ulusal İrtibat Noktası olarak görev yapmaktayım. Yine panelistler arasında gördüğünüz Merve Hanım'la birlikte bu görevi sürdürmekteyiz. EIC Accelerator programı aslında inovatif kapasitesi yüksek risk içeren ama yüksek etki gösterebilecek fikirleri olan KOBİ'ler için oluşturulmuş bir program. Hibe artı yatırım seçeneğiyle birlikte Ufuk Avrupa Programı ile birlikte Avrupa Komisyonu bu bahsettiğimiz nitelikteki KOBİ'lerin her türlü finansal ihtiyacını karşılayabilecek bir destek programı kurguladı. Biz de elimizden geldiğince firmalarımızın bu programlar hakkında bilgilenmesi için çeşitli faaliyetler sürdürmekteyiz. Programın bütün bileşenlerini, süreçlerin tamamını kapsayacak şekilde bugüne kadar bu proje kapsamında çeşitli etkinlikler gerçekleştirdik. Web sitemizde zaten bu etkinliklerin birçoğu da zaten pandemi döneminden dolayı online olarak gerçekleştirildiği için onların kayıtları da mevcut. Girip onlara da bakabilirsiniz. Bugün de şu ana kadar yapılmış faaliyetlerin bir özeti şeklinde düşünebileceğiniz iyi uygulamaları sizlerle paylaşmak istiyoruz. TÜBİTAK olarak, ulusal irtibat noktaları olarak tabii programla ilgili her türlü detay için bizlere erişebilirsiniz. Ufuk Avrupa Org.tr isminde Türkiye'de resmi iletişim kanalı olan bir web sitesi var. O web sitesine eğer üye olursanız bizden her türlü bilgiyi birinci kanaldan, birinci ağızdan almış olursunuz. Ayrıca web sitesi içerisinde işte gerek bizim EIC programı ile ilgili sayfada gerekse kim kimdir kısmında programla bizlerin iletişim bilgilerine de erişebiliyorsunuz. Her zaman iletişim kurulabilir bir şekilde yaklaşıyoruz. Dolayısıyla gerek telefonla gerekse e-mail her zaman bizimle iletişim kurabileceğinizi söyleyebiliriz. Ayrıca şundan da bahsetmek istiyorum. Program EIC Accelerator programı bugün zaten detaylarından bahsedilecek ama 2 aşamalı bir başvurudan oluşan bir program. Birinci aşamada short application başvurusunu firmalarımız kendi başlarına zaten çok kolay bir şekilde yapabilirler. İkinci aşamaya geçtiğiniz zaman da gerek TÜBİTAK tarafından sağlanan koordinatörlük desteğinden gerekse de Avrupa Komisyonu tarafından sağlanan koçluk hizmetlerinden faydalanarak çok etkili bir ikinci aşama başvurusu yapmanız mümkün. Dolayısıyla aslında program sizi kendi içine çeken bir şekilde ilerliyor. Bugün ben program hakkında çok fazla detaya girmeyeceğim. Zaten uzmanlarımız tarafından konu her türlü detayıyla ele alınacak. Öncelikle ben Türkçe olarak katılımcılarımızı bir selamlamak istedim, giriş yapmak istedim. Şimdi etkinlik dili İngilizce olacağı için müsaadenizle İngilizce olarak devam edip sözü Filip'e devredeceğim. Thank you for listening to me. I just wanted to make an introduction in Turkish language, but because the event will continue in English, I will hand over to our colleagues. Thank you for listening to me. I shall be here with the project team during the webinar to respond to your questions. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions, even if you cannot use English very properly. It doesn't matter. We are here. You can also ask your questions in Turkish, and we will try to answer your questions. I would like to hand over to Philip and his colleagues to share their working experience of good practice in applying for the EIC Accelerator. Philip, over to you.
Okay. Good night and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us for our 11th webinar, in fact, on the project. And I think our 37th event on the SME component of our project. Who am I? Many of you, I think, have heard from me or seen me before. My background is in manufacturing. I've been involved in SME programs, small and medium enterprise programs at regional, national and international level. I've been working in Turkey now for around 12 years on and off, and I've met many companies and individuals in Turkey in that time. So today's webinar is going to focus, as Tarek said, on good practice that we've gathered from initial and full applications, and before it, of course, the SME instrument, and indeed from our own careers as consultants and academics in the field. As Tarek said, the event is yours to ask as many questions as you wish. It's not a formal thing. You may think the question seems silly or irrelevant. Please don't ask the question if it's of concern to you, and we shall respond. If not today, then after the event. All of these events and events which focus on particular aspects of the program, such as pitch deck and the 3-minute video and so forth, are all on our website, as indeed today's event will appear on our website in the next couple of days. So we're talking this morning about the insight of over 200 SME applications and proposals and feedback from many more. The first thing to say is 2 key documents in the whole of this process: the guide for applicants and the work program. You really must have a look at these. You must read through these. These set out everything that you need to know about the program, how to apply, what the EIC and the European Commission are looking for. And you'll see on the left there, there's a huge number of backup sites that are also there to help. The work program you'll see is 2022, and the Commission will shortly publish the 2023, I guess December come January, the 2023 work program. We don't expect to see many changes in the SME component accelerator, but of course you should look to see if there are any changes, and importantly it will give the cutoff dates for full applications. So, because our audience consists of people who are new to Accelerator as well as those who know it well, just a brief recap on the Accelerator program. So, who is it for? It's for single startups or small businesses. It's based on individual application. It's not a collaborative program. It's on individual applications. And you see there that the restriction is up to 250 employees or 50 million turnover. That's euros, of course. That seems a huge turnover, but if you have a automated steelworks, you may turn over many times that figure on a much smaller staff than 250. So that's why it's there. For slightly larger companies up to 500, the Commission will help on finding investors, but not providing grant support. So it's primarily for companies up to 250 employees, which covers probably 97% of companies in Turkey. So it has a very broad application. The ideal SME, this is where the good practice comes in to begin with. You look at the top line there, they must be market creating, high risk, high growth, high impact, breakthrough innovations. They're looking for the really top innovations, not the also-rans, but something that is really different, because there are many applications for support, but the Commission want to focus on those which are likely to give the best return to the European and, of course, the Turkish taxpayers who've invested in the programme. Along with that, if it is a really good innovation, then it will help Europe to gain the technological advantage and a greater share of global markets. When I mention Europe in terms of this programme, of course, I'm including Turkey in that. Projects destined for full market deployment. If you think of sitting in the seat of an investor, these are questions you would ask if you were investing your money in the project. Is there a market? How big is the market? How quickly will it get to market? How many will it sell? What will be the profit? What will be the return? And are you sure you can do this? So these are all this is the basis of all of the questions, even though there are many of them. And if you think in that sense, it's good practice to think in that sense. It will guide you as to whether your innovation is likely to stand a chance of funding, and if so, how best to win that funding. So it's about strategic novel innovations, but the Commission is peculiar in that they will fund risky projects. In other words, projects which have an element of risk, which, if that is put right, will make the project more attractive to investors. We hear a lot about technology readiness levels, TRL. This was developed, I think, by NASA for the space program. You'll see that it goes all the way through from idea, the business concept, through to testing the market, testing the product, and finally, the third grouping, which is business deployment. Accelerator is firmly about this particular set of TRLs. So from 6, they will cover from 5, but ideally from 6, projects which have been proven in the field as prototypes, and users have had the opportunity to give feedback, all the way then through to full commercial applications. So this is not a research project. It's investment in something which has a good chance of being commercialized. And it's no good trying to fool the Commission into thinking you're at a higher level than you are, or that you're at a lower level than you are. They're very good, of course, at analyzing technology readiness level, so you should be sure of the fact that you're at the right level. How do SMEs apply? It's through an artificial intelligence-based platform, which seems to work well. There were a few teething problems to begin with. First of all, you have to register with the European Commission, a very simple process, and you can find it using that route through the Europa website. The Europa website is the European Commission's official website, and it carries lots of information. It's a very good website, very informative, and I would recommend that you use it. You have to use it, though, to register with the European Commission before you can apply. I mentioned at the bottom there the work programme, which you should read in conjunction with applying. So there are 4 stages, and I'm covering the initial application. The initial application covers 2 elements to begin with: discovery and diagnostic. Discovery is to help you to identify if there are any other relevant funding sources, either nationally, internationally, to see whether your project will be better funded through those routes. So it gives you the opportunity to make a choice as to where you should apply for funding. It's compulsory to use it, but it doesn't have a bearing on you applying. The diagnostic then, you feed in the information about your project, and it gives back whether there are other projects which are similar, which have been funded, and it will give an opinion on whether yours would stand a chance, what level it would stand a chance of being successful. You then go on to make the initial application, and the information you've put into the diagnostic automatically transfers into the application. Worth remembering that the application is limited on word size, and therefore you have to be brief and to the point in order to get your idea into the framework that they've designed. So try and condense it down into the main points. And remember, it's about the commercial potential of your product and your business. It's not how clever you are academically or how many awards you've had. That, of course, is supporting information for later on, but it's important to get to the point and impress the evaluators first off that you have a really good innovation. So the short application, it asks about, of course, project information, as I've just said, the company, the chief executive. There needs to be a contact that they can use in connection with the program. You also have to provide a pitch deck of 10 to 12 slides, which sets out your project. A little bit difficult right at the start of a project, but this shows it's really important good practice to set out your idea, how you're going to do it, what the market is, because you have to summarize all this in your pitch deck, which goes with your initial application. And there's also a requirement for a 3-minute video to show the team, ideally 3 people. And ideally within that, it's good practice to have someone who's in marketing, someone who's in in the commercial side of things, the legality, the patents, the accounts, and so forth. And of course, the third person, a technical person who can support the project, or science and technology, I should say, and that one of those is in charge. So it's quite clear who's in charge and the roles of the 3 individuals. There's then a series of additional questions covering the 3 main areas that they evaluate, which is the ideation, development, and go-to-market. If we look at those, ideation, I prefer to think of still as excellence. It used to be called excellence. This is how good is the idea? What's the solution you're proposing to a problem you've identified? What is the need for that solution? What's new about it? Why do you think it will be successful? And why is this the right time to do it? The development aspect, this is really the team and how you will manage the project and ultimately the commercialization. So what's the risk of failure? Do you need to cooperate with others? Do you have the right people on board to do the project? Why can't it be done without EC funding? In other words, if it's a very clever idea, why don't commercial funders want to back it? And of course, a rough idea of the cost. And the third area, go-to-market, which I tend to think of still as impact. What's the targeted market? Where will your company be in 5 years with and without the funding? And what will you consider to be a success? Now, all of those are questions you should ask yourself. It's good practice to do so that you can then respond. And again, good practice to think of those before you apply so that you're not making it up as you go along. It's not a research grant. It is support to get a good product, an innovative product to market. I mentioned ideation, go-to-market development, but still the evaluators evaluate under the old headings. So the excellence, the impact your product and your company will make, and how you will go about it. If you don't have a team on board, you can build the requirement to recruit a team in your bid if it goes through to the second stage, the full application. So that's a brief summary of Accelerator for those who are not clear on it or who are new to it. Let's have a look at some good practice. So I'd like to begin by saying Turkey, I think, has done very well. I've worked in over 30 countries, and I think Turkey is up there in terms of the amount of support it provides, because the aim has been to build a national innovation infrastructure through the provision of science parks, grants, tax subsidies, and so on, grants through TÜBİTAK, as we've heard from Tarek. There's excellent talent. Don't let anyone say that Turkey is any way behind on science and technology. Turkey has some excellent scientists and engineers, and they have some very innovative ideas, and many of which I've seen in the course of working with them. And these ideas, I think, have global potential. Witness the one of the key vaccines that were produced for COVID from a Turkish couple. There's slowly increasing venture capital availability and private investment funding, but of course that has had setbacks with the global depression that's creeping in on the financial markets. There's always a but. In terms of many Turkish SMEs, I'm generalizing here, but often there's no real strategy for the business, the direction it's going, or the business plan of how they will get there. Business plan, quite simply, where are we now? Where are we going? How will we get there? And many companies can't answer that question. They're not aware of their full business potential. They've had an expanding home market for many years and are comfortable with that and don't see the prospects of the export side of things to other markets. Not much ambition to grow. Just think of providing more of the same instead of developing something on the back of what they've done already. And a low awareness of competition and short-sightedness on markets. The low awareness of competition is often on international competition. Consequently, there's low investment often in marketing and product development. So these are things that need to be addressed because this is the prime focus of Accelerator on the commercialization and the ability of the business to see it through to international markets. So many businesses could do very well despite these issues, but they have much greater potential, and it can be quite frustrating to see some of these businesses with potential that the company has difficulty in recognizing. So the four sort of areas where we spotted problems in the initial application and indeed in the full application, I've summarized as markets, products, management, and resources. Now, in the application, the questions focus on what's your targeted market, who cares about your innovation? In other words, is there any interest in those markets? Why do you think it will be a success? What proof do you have? And what are the payoffs for your company in the case of market success? How will the company benefit? And of course, with that, how will investors benefit? So often the companies assume there will be a market for the product. They think it's such a good idea, there must be a market, without actually looking at the need in the market and whether the customers want it. So again, don't assume there's a market and don't assume that customers will want it. Check and see and find proof. Don't step outside the customer base too far because, of course, you don't know how that customer base works and how they will respond. So a limited expansion beyond your customer base, don't create a product entirely different to your core business. And at the same time, don't neglect your core business and customers. Think how the business can carry on serving other businesses and customers if you do develop a new product strain. So good practice is to have extensive research on any competitors, identify the potential customers and check with them that they do have a need and they will invest. And it's good to get letters from them saying that they will do so if the product comes to market. Focus on a particular market and how you will serve it. So many companies say to me, we're going to market into Europe. That's over 50 countries. It's 27 member states, all with different languages, regulations, competition, different ways of marketing and so forth. So try and focus on a particular market which has been researched and try and stick to what you know and do best, because of course you'll be tested on these things if you go through to a full application and a jury panel. So the product questions, who cares about the innovation? Will it have broader societal, economic, environmental, or climate impacts? This is to bring in the strands of political and scientific interests within the Commission. It's about improving society, improving the economy of individuals and member states, not damaging the environment, of course, improving the environment over time, and having the least impact on climate change. So if you can feed any of these things, it's good practice to feed them in so that you score extra points in your application. Looking at the existing solutions, it's good practice to have a table of existing providers, if they exist, with all the attributes, the providers on the x-axis, the attributes, the different characteristics on the y-axis, and simple tick boxes to show how your product, your proposed product, compares with what's on the market. It's a very simple way of doing this. And of course, why you think you'll be successful, what proof do you have, and why now? So many companies forget to check extensively if a product already exists. And if you can, apply on a step change or disruptive innovation. Incremental, minor improvements stand less of a chance of funding. The risks important to clarify, because as I said earlier, the Commission are interested in funding risks. And that remember that what may be innovative in your own market or markets may not be innovative in others. It's often missed. Don't assume success, try to prove it. So ensure that the product's seen as disruptive if you can, and prove why. Good to have a wow factor, really good practice, something the evaluators can look at and think, wow, this is a really good idea. So that needs to be early on in your application to capture the imagination of the evaluators, and indeed early on in your video and pitch deck. Novelty does appeal to evaluators, it has to be said. They see many applications, and novelty, innovation is what really appeals to them. Try and explain the concept in a simple way. Many of the evaluators do not have English as their first language, and so don't use over-technical language and acronyms that a specialist would need to know. Try and put it in a straightforward, simple way. And remember, you're trying to win the idea that you have a commercial success. You're not trying to impress with the science and technology. The prime thing is, does it have a market? Science and technology come second to that. And the same with the people doing the pitching. You can have the cleverest idea in the world, but if you have no idea how to market, sell, or to handle the business growth, it's not going to get there in comparison to others who do. So try and show the niche in the market for your particular product, rather than saying, I've seen ideas which say this has global appeal to millions of users. No, try and show the niche market to begin with and how you will grow it to the millions of users if that's relevant. So the management questions, who's in charge of the team? Simple questions. Who makes the financial commitments and decisions? Who will manage the project, control the team? What's the current situation with the business? What direction are you taking it? This is where the strategy and business planning comes in. How do you see your company in 5 years? Definitely a strategy question. And what are the risks of failure? What's the plan B, in other words? Many companies proceed without a strategy. I mentioned this earlier. I always recommend a rolling 5-year strategy, and then within that, an individual annual business plan for the next year. So you can have long-term goals and shorter-term checks and balances to make sure you're going to get there. You can always change your strategy and in extreme circumstances, your business plan to adjust. But it's best to see the iceberg long before you hit it. This is what business planning is about. So don't assume, find out. Don't leave it to the others to assume that the information, tell them the information. Don't leave it to others. It needs to be driven by somebody senior. If you had a potential customer who wanted to place a €500,000 to a €2.5 million order with you, you'd throw everything at it in terms of the company trying to win. And this has to be the case with Accelerator. Don't have confusing business models and finances. Put it in a straightforward way so that it can be seen. And don't forget to check all the documentation is correctly completed. It's amazing how many misinformation and therefore are are disallowed as applications. So strategy and business plan, take charge, manage it, give the same priority as you would to a big customer. Build the enthusiasm, drive the team. Don't rely on junior people brought in or external consultants to write the thing. Consultants are very good at helping you to draft a proposal, but you must take charge. If you think it's too complicated and bureaucratic, all this stuff, decide before you apply rather than not after and waste your time. And the resource questions, the team members, do you need any more team members? What will you do to recruit them? Will you need to cooperate with other stakeholders and so forth? Why not other funding sources? Why do you need the EC to fund this? All key questions that you would ask as investors. And of course, a rough idea of how much you're looking for as a grant. Don't underestimate what's needed. The Commission are nervous of underestimations of grant and investment, I should say, as well as over enthusiasm. So don't leave it to the junior people. Don't spend too long emphasizing science and technology. Have a balance with the business and market potential. Don't overbalance the academic achievements with commercial experience. Often companies are a spin out from universities, and there is an imbalance of academic people going forward to a commercial company. Don't ignore the help that's out there. Has to be a team effort. The EC, as I said, are funding commercial prospects, not research. Very important point. Make good practice to make use of the EC and national resources and ensure a balanced team. I mentioned earlier, technical, finance and marketing. So in summary, make sure that the innovation is needed, who needs it, and what it does not already exist. Carefully review the documentation, work plans, calls, and so on, so that the application will fit with what they're looking for. You'll never make the program fit your idea. You have to make your idea fit the program. Scrutinize this bidding process. Ensure that you meet all the criteria. Make sure you have this good balance between what you know well, the technology and science in many cases, with what you may be weak on, the commercial and marketing side. And ensure rational and justifiable budgets, because you'll be tested on them and the Commission will want to know how it's going to be applied and what the return will be over time. I mentioned the reference material. Those two booklets are very important. They're downloadable, easily accessible, and look out for next year's work program coming along in the next couple of months. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And if you have questions, please feed them into the online Q&A system, and we shall try and deal with them as we go along. So I hand over at this point to Adamantios, who will take us through the second stage, good practice. Over to you, Adamantios.
Thanks, Philip. And actually, you gave several good leads for what I will now be presenting. And at some extent, because Philip's presentation was about good practice in making the initial application, though several of the items that he mentions and advice he provides applies also for the final application, the second stage. The thing is that while in the first application stage, one may win simply because the process is simpler, so it's only the short proposal that you fill out on the website, on the portal, plus the pitch deck slides, the 10 pitch deck slides, and a short video of 3 minutes. The next phase, the second phase, the final application requires much more information, which means that even if you ignored some of the advice that Philip gave before for the first stage, one may pay the cost of this ignorance at the second stage. So now I will share my screen with you, and Kemal, you will inform me in case there are any questions, so that I will be able to answer them during my presentation, not at the end. So it's about good practice in applying for accelerator support and actually good practice in making the final application. And what follows is a mini version, if you like to call it so, of previous events about proposal writing, helping people write the second stage application for accelerator, not in a condensed form, but by filtering out the good practice. And we will also cover some key do's and don'ts in completing the various sections of the application. First of all, stage 1 and stage 2. As I already said, they are quite different. Stage 1 is easy and comfortable to cope with. So in this respect, it is relatively easy to have a winning application for stage 1. And stage 2 is perhaps even unjustly complicated and painful. So this is really, literally, as I mean it, it is unjustly complicated and painful, stage 2. And failure in stage 2 is usually a result of a poorly applied process. Of course, there can be the case that what your business idea is about doesn't reflect the maturity that is required. So you may have come up with something that is at TRL level 3 or 4 and not 6 or higher. But usually this is not the case. So proposals for stage 2, they have been already filtered out, so they are not necessarily immature business ideas. The problem, as I said, given also very recent experiences that we acquired from the last deadline, which was in the beginning of October, it is related with a poorly applied process for preparing the application. And what does this actually mean? Okay, we may have some idea about how a police interrogation looks like or is structured, even if we have been only watching it in some movies and some reading it in some books or other similar circumstances. For instance, in case someone is questioned by their husband or wife or by their boss in the business, in a company. So there, the idea is that one is asked similar questions again and again. All these similar questions have partial overlaps for the topic and the subject, hoping eventually to not provide inconsistent information from your side, which means that there is a number of recurring questions about similar aspects of the business, so that someone at the end either succeeds in having good and convincing answers to what they are asked, or fail. So stage 2 is all about like a competition. Only the ones that are consistent with their business idea and have a consistent understanding of their envisaged business are about to survive. So it's like survival of the most fittest to get the funding. And what does this practically mean? That, as I said, there are recurring questions or questions with expectation of contextually close answers. And if the answers appear inconsistent, the result will be a rejection. And of course, the evaluators may have different opinions. However, a single no-go from one evaluator suffices to block the process. I would say we may have experience also from other fields, so not necessarily police interrogation, but imagine that we are organizing interviews in our organization to hire people. And there is a group of 3 people from the company that participates in these interviews. So if the person that is interviewed fails to convince all 3 of them, it might possibly block their recruitment. And let's have a look to a sequence of the stage 2 application screenshots. This part is what in the past, what I mentioned before, was extensive. So it took even more than 2 hours to go to each of the questions that appear in the application for stage 2. But now the idea is not to stay too long into the details, but so that you may get an idea about what I meant before about this recurring questions, and this idea that questions were asking for similar aspects, and there was very easy that people ended up in inconsistent answers, providing inconsistent answers. So we start from a question that might seem even very strange. So whether what you are proposing is a new value chain or not. I'm sure many people might have expected that provide us in a single sentence your mission statement, your business goals. And the question is whether it is a new value chain or not. And then for each of these questions, the size of the answers is at the level of 1,000 characters, so about 120, 150 words. Sometimes it is only 500 characters, and some other times you need to elaborate with 2,000 characters or even 4,000 or 5,000 characters. Now imagine that with 1,000 characters, so about 100 words, you have to be very focused to provide convincing answers. So sometimes it's easier to prepare a 2-page presentation of something than a single paragraph or a single sentence. And then the idea is that one has to define problems and solutions that your business idea relates with. And this in the form of also mentioning what is the innovation. So we start from a question that is about your value chain, if it is a new or not. Then we have to define problems and solutions that we are dealing with. And then we are asked about the innovation. So everyone who has been assigned the project to come up and write and prepare these stage to application may feel very uncomfortable. And back to what Philip said before, it's not a matter of having a single person assigned this task. We may have one person who will organize and coordinate the process, but it needs a team. So it demands that applicants will cope with all these questions as part of a team effort. So, and there again, one has to provide information if the innovation that we are introducing is about a significant improvement of something existing, or it's a brand new thing or something else. Even there, people are not necessarily comfortable to answer whether it is a brand new thing. Of course, everything we come up with some new idea, we think that it's a brand new thing, but it might simply be some improvement or something existing, or an existing product, but approached from a different perspective regarding the production process. And then we are asked questions about the level of innovation. And again, we have to provide answers. I'm sure that many people intuitively might say, our innovation, our product is very innovative. But one should be cautious, because whatever we say at some stage may provide inconsistencies to what we said before or to what will be asked in the future. And here again, we have to name the problem stakeholders. So for each of the problems we mentioned before, we have to name stakeholders of these problems. And same also for the solutions we mentioned before that our product, our offering, our business solution offers, we have to name solution stakeholders. So this, even the jargon, the terminology used, is not something that many people might feel comfortable with, which means that someone might need to have at least some days or few weeks to get familiar with this terminology and the questions that they are asked. And this not in a linear fashion, I will again mention this later, but going with continuous back and forth in all these questions. And then someone is asked about the value proposition, but not in general of the business, but related with a stakeholder of a problem, and later about a stakeholder of the solution, which means that it is a grid of questions where, as you see here, we are required to provide something like 5,000 characters, which means that here we have space to provide more information. Now, from our experience, many applicants provided very little information in fields where they were required to provide. So here, like 5,000 characters, maybe more than 500 words, and people were unable to provide as good information for many fields. And then after you name the stakeholder related with a problem, and don't forget there are several problems and several stakeholders for each problem, you have to provide some information about the unique selling point. And then in order to relieve the pain of the stakeholders, what are the aims that your solution improves and provides some gains? And then again, a question about the unique positioning in the market, which means that people who may have been before 2 points asked about the unique selling point, they are confused because now they are asked about the unique positioning place in the market, and they might think that, okay, haven't I answered this question before? No, before it was about the unique selling point of your offering. Now it is about your unique positioning in the market, which means that, and it continues with use cases of the solutions where you again have to provide information, and for different use case, so you may not ground the entire application only on a single use case. So you may have to present there several use cases, and for each use case you have to provide information about certain features, pains and gains related to the use cases that your business is going to intervene and to provide some improvements. And then you are asked about the achievements so far, which means that at some point you have to state there clearly and explicitly what has been done so far. And there again, you have to name the achievements and also relate them with some TRL, which means that if your achievements so far were that you have written in some blogs about your business idea and that you made presentation in some TEDx events, these don't have a convincingly high TRL, which means that if all your achievements are at a level of 1, 2, 3, so there is no significant evidence that you are mature enough to submit an application that will be from TRL level 6, which means that at some point, so just imagine now a hypothetical situation that we are all now members of a team, that we are applying for stage 2, and we realize now it may be not 5 days before the submission, so we may have even 5 months before the next cutoff line, and we realize that all the achievements we may be able to show so far are having a very low TRL. So we might then rethink the idea of submitting the application, or we might try to see there if there is space for improving or coming up with achievements that will allow us to show there a more convincing, a higher TRL level. And for each of these achievements, one may need to provide some brief comments. So you see for each achievement, 1,000 characters or about 150 words suffice. And this may include also some links to external websites where you have some demonstrators or some more evidence and evidential information about your achievements, so that they are not only speculations. And what are your next steps needed to bring your innovation to market or close to it? Again, one has to provide detailed information for this. And the idea there is that you are asking money in order to carry out technology transfer, feasibility study, prototyping, demonstration, pilot. It's about a market study, a business plan. So in many cases, at that stage, at that point, applicants realize there that they don't know exactly what they are asking money for. So they are asking money in order to mature their business or grow their business. But when they are asked exactly about what are the specific activities that they need money for, they are not prepared. And this stage, so I will not continue with any other screens. I think, okay, this was about the features that each use case needs to show, and for each feature we have to relate it with socio-technical aspects or data collection or anything else that provides more information for the features, and also the innovative character that we provide and the needed technology that already exists and the technology that will be developed, and according to our technology to be developed, what is the added value of this technology to be developed? Because we may ask to get funded for some technology that we will develop, but there may be no added value for this. And the thing there is that I will go back to the slides there. And here, these questions that I showed are general questions. Later, the screenshots that I will not show today are related with work packages, which means that, okay, the funding may be 2 million euros that you ask for in stage 2, but then you will have to relate this funding to specific activities that you will ask to get financed for, which means that you will have to split this sum into several activities. Some of them will relate to market studies. Some of them will relate to business plan or to investment from public authority preparation, or to testing or demonstration activities for what you already have, but in a bigger audience. Now, the thing is that it's very easy that even if you have convincingly completed the first part that I showed you some screens from the application process, one may fail later when you have to elaborate and describe which are the activities that you will accommodate as part of the different work packages. So, what are the impressions left to you? First of all, I think that we would all agree that all questions are simple on their own. So there is nothing there that someone might say that you need to possess an advanced degree in business administration. And so even a second year student in business might be able to address the questions well enough. The problem is when someone looks into these questions together. So it is the big picture that all questions compose that creates the problem. And the problem is that people lack on convincing arguments or on convincing answers. There is a lack of a good flow in the sequence of the various topics. So people may have started with some convincing information about the value chain, that yes, it is a new value chain, or no, it's an existing value chain, and yes, this is our value proposition. But then they fail to provide good answers about the problem stakeholders and the solution stakeholders. Or they may again succeed in providing fairly enough answers for the stakeholders, problem and solution, but then when they are asked to present use cases, they don't do this in a convincing way. Or even if they do this in a convincing way, when they are asked to relate their use cases with problems and solutions and their stakeholders, they may not do this in a convincing way. And then when they are asked again to provide features for each of their use cases, so this is what I mentioned before, that it is a very tedious process the stage 2 application, it needs a team, and it needs all what we learn about agility principles, which means that we need a team that will be able to cope with all these backs and forths in the different questions, so that the final result will be looking perfect, looking excellent, looking convincing. And of course, all these different questions provide information that one may put together into having a good story. And lack of showing that applicants master sufficiently the subject is something that may appear at some point for the evaluators. So what I mean here is that even for products that are already established in the market, so imagine we talk about Facebook or Instagram. If we would now ask a team of people, even the creators of Facebook and Instagram, to prepare their idea about a stage 2 application, it might be possible that they might fail. So they might fail simply to provide good, convincing answers to the question. And this is what I said before, that perhaps the process for stage 2 application is at some point unjust. Okay, so it's not fair, because many good ideas might, or many good business ideas, mature business ideas, may fail because of poor presentation and poor application of the process. So I will now simulate what I mentioned before with a simple question. So I will ask Philip to lend me 2,000 euros. So Philip, please, I need 2,000 euros. Would you lend me this money?
What do you want it for?
Okay, I have to provide Philip with some good or excellent answers to his questions. And Philip, remember, Philip doesn't owe to me this money. Okay, so I have to come up with some good answers. So it is me who needs to put effort to convince him. I don't know, Philip, I think that I would like that we build a website where we might sell advice about applicants for Accelerator. Or I think that we might write a best-selling book about our experiences from fundraising for SMEs. But okay, do you think that Philip would lend me 2,000 euros? Actually, in case of Accelerator, it's a grant. So it's not about lending money. It's about offering me this money as a present. So I think that from his side, Philip has all the good reasons to be very selective and very cautious and demanding to have good answers. Okay. And actually, what I said before is that the team makes a difference. And
actually, Adamantios, just to finish on that, the answer is no.
Okay. I think that all of us, the people that attend the webinar, may have inferred that you would not lend me the 2,000 euros. But so you didn't need to be so direct. Thanks, Philip. So in most of our experiences, stage 2 proposals have been assigned to a single person. So what was in one of Philip's slides, that in a company, they ask an accountant or a young junior member of the team to simply take care of this application. And this person usually struggles on their own to build the proposal. And there were usually no teams. And what does team mean? Means that you have a group of people who are committed, engaged, there is responsiveness, there is continuous interaction amongst the members, and it's not linear process with periodic checks and feedback loops. So what appeared to be something like a team in our experiences was that there was one person who coordinated the proposal writing, and he or she was struggling alone. And at some point, that person shared what they already have built with some other people. They got some feedback, or that person may have asked other people to provide him or her with some answers. So this is not a team. So this might be good in a bureaucracy, but this is not what might be a winning team for a stage 2 proposal. So you need ideally to apply these agile methods, or like in Scrum that you have daily stand-ups where people meet once per day and they see what they achieved yesterday and what they need to cope with today. And it might be something that they might need to refine answers they provided yesterday. And for me, it's a very natural and normal thing if you start the process and you realize that you have never thought about the problem and solution stakeholders. So then you might need to go and dive deep into these questions and come back with some convincing answers. And otherwise, it's good to give up early and not spend and waste resources for this. And the cons of setting up a team is that it requires a very high amount of resources. Okay, so I understand fully if a company or a team of people would not like the idea of wasting, spending, burning lots of their time collectively into something like this. But there is an advantage. If you have set up a team, you can dramatically compress the preparation times, which means that instead of having this stage 2 application running as a process for months with very poor performance, you might say that, okay, we don't afford to have a team of 5 or 8 people that will get involved into this for the next 5 months or 3 months, but we might all of us manage to block 5 days at some point where we will all of us dedicate fully ourselves into this to make it happen. So in this respect, I would say that this will not have as high risk of failure. On the other hand, I'm sure that it might be difficult to block collectively for a group of people time that will not be like the time we block for a Zoom meeting, but it might be something like several days. On the other hand, it might be a good way that you increase the chances of success. So some key takeaway messages is that do not start the process if there is no team to support and follow it. In case of no team, provide the liberty to a person to build a team. So this is another option you have. So you may assign this process to some junior member of your company, but it's good to delegate that person to have as many degrees of freedom so that they would create a team that would support them. And it might include also external people, so not necessarily people from the company. And engage in the team anyone who can help in the process and the application. And this, as I mentioned, includes external collaborators and experts. So literally anyone who can help you win the application. Now, again, based on our experiences, there is a last slide that I will show, which is my email. And I always conclude my presentations telling that feel comfortable to contact me in case you have any questions or in case you need some help, some input. And there were very few cases that I was approached, very few cases. So it might be less than 5. And in these less than 5 cases, people asked me some question, I gave some answer, there were no follow-ups, there was no passion there to share what they developed with me so that they might get some substantial input and feedback, which means that I'm sure this is not the right approach. And at some point, being shy or being not so committed to demand and get input from anyone who might help you win it doesn't convince people that it will be a winning application. And it is in this respect that this issue of the team is a dynamic process. So you can start in a very low profile and be relatively shy, but then progressively you may demand more and more commitment from other people who may have been in the beginning not caring at all about your proposal, but they might end up spending more and more time with you. So, are the above pieces of advice usually followed? Unfortunately not. Why? This is a good question, but I would pass the ball to Odysseus, and if we have time at the end, we might discuss it a little bit also with Philip and see there what is his perspective on it, on this matter. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions, Kemal?
We don't have any questions coming in, Adamantios, which is very unusual. I would encourage people to do so. We'd be delighted to deal with them. One point that perhaps we didn't make clear: the initial applications for Accelerator can be made at any time, but the full application, they have cut-off dates, usually 3 or 4 a year. We don't know next year's, and this year's have already gone, the 7th of October. Companies often think they have a lot of time when they haven't, leading up to a cutoff, or the other way around. They try and do it too quickly to get the application in and fail. So it's important to have the timing for the full application. But as I say, the initial one can be made any time. 2 questions have come in. Obviously, people are encouraged. We'll look at those. But meanwhile, I'll hand over to Odysseus, who will talk to us about the financial and the legal and PR issues that we often are asked about. So over to you, Odysseus.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you. So let me start my presentation and we can discuss over it. I hope you can see the right screen now. So
I think we see are you using 2 screens?
I'm using 2 screens. Do I need to change it to swap it? Is it right now?
Now it's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. So legal, financial, and IP aspects in EIC Accelerator. I'd like to discuss a few legal and financial issues that are probably beyond just the purview of EIC Accelerator. It is something that all startups, all companies that aspire to go to EIC Accelerator should make sure that they have. So just a reminder of who I am. I am Odysseus Spiroglu. I am the team leader of the project, and I'm dealing with innovation for a lot of years. I've also dealt with various projects from all initiatives of European Commission, and I've been doing that for a few years now. So what we will cover now, we will cover 3 items: legal, financial, and intellectual property. Some of them are interlinked, like the intellectual property falls into a lot of times into legal aspects. But it's easier if we approach them separately. So in terms of the legal aspects that startups need to make sure that they have, the first and foremost, it's incorporation. You need to have a business. And not only you need to have a business, but you need to make sure that you have all the legal documents in place and you have the legal consultants to support you in the process. Because especially if you are aspiring to get the blended finance, then you will need a lot of legal support in the process. So In incorporation, if you are based in Turkey, these are the companies that you can. These are the forms of the company, the types of companies that you can pick from. The joint stock company, it's a public company. Then you have a limited company, a collective company, limited partnership, and the cooperative. Most of the private businesses go for the limited partnership, especially when they are young companies. It's the easiest type of company to handle. There are similar types of companies all over Europe. Sometimes you see them with different names, like the joint stock company. Of course, it's a Société Anonyme or the anonymous type of companies. Now we also have the European type of companies, which is a more limited partnership, and it's easy to transfer between European member states, but it has to be in a European member state. So work with an accountant and a legal consultant that can help you pick the right form of company that will serve your needs. It doesn't have to be necessarily a limited partnership. It may be a joint stock company or a limited company or a collective company. It depends really on your needs and what are your plans for the next few years. Something also Philip mentioned, you need to be an SME. And okay, the easy way to identify if you are an SME, of course, it's the people you employ, the staff headcount, and your annual turnover. But that's not just it, because if you have a lot of private investors, either venture capitals or bigger companies supporting you, then you have to check if you are autonomous, which means you have to check if your company is controlled by another company or by another individual. And sometimes a company can be considered control company if you have an individual in that company, but that individual controls another company. So it may not be considered autonomous, and therefore not considered an SME. It needs attention to that, and you need to make sure that you have it before you start your journey towards EIC Accelerator. There is a very detailed document. You can see the link in the slide, where you can go through the whole validation process, verification process, step by step. And there is also a self-assessment tool in the Horizon portal, which asks you all these questions that guide you through the process and identify if you are actually a company that it's linked to another company, or if you're an autonomous SME company. So pay attention to the definition, especially if you have other individuals or other legal bodies participating in your company. Because otherwise it's simple. Obviously, you will not employ more than 250 persons, and you will have a less than 50 million turnover if you are a startup. Then you have to start working on the legal library that you will need in order to build your partnerships, in order to build your strategic alliances. And one of the most convenient documents, and you can use it in a lot of situations, is the Memorandum of Understanding. It's not a legal document per se, so it's not always legal binding unless you make it legal binding. But it's more like a framework of negotiations and how you're going to approach it and how you're going to approach any partnership. In collaborative projects, we use that to define the level of collaboration that we want to achieve between different partners. In SME instrument, in EIC Accelerator, it can be a document that you can use to build your partnerships and show that you have in your network strategic partnerships and alliances that can help you with what you are suggesting. The NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, is also something very important, and confidentiality, especially to commercial businesses, is vital. So you need such a document, and this document can be signed with maybe with external consultants, with your lawyer, although the lawyer and the accountant also are obliged to comply with confidentiality based on the code of conduct of their profession. But you may work with some external consultants, some individual experts that help you work on your proposal. It's always good to have an NDA agreement with them. And now let's move to the operating agreements on how your startup will work and how it will operate. Operating agreement is basically the legal document in LLCs, in limited liability companies. And this operating agreement outlines the financial rules, the responsibilities of the founders, how disputes are resolved, and many more. So it is something that you need to have in order to get incorporated. In bigger companies, in corporations, in société anonymes or joint stock companies, we need more than just an operating agreement. There we have the articles of incorporation, we have the company bylaws, we have the stock certificates. So not all of them are necessary for LLCs, but these are the legal documents that we need to have in place. Now, there are templates for that, but these templates are generic. And especially if you are going for a fund, and if you intend to include other investors to your company, or if you intend to give some stock options to your employees, then you need to spend some time in these documents, and you need to describe very clearly how you are going to approach these cases, how you're going to work with your employees, how many stocks are you going to offer them, what are the terms for that, what are the benefits for them, and what will happen if they want to leave. These are things that you also should include into your employee contracts. Again, in every country, there are some generic templates that you can use and using these templates are compliant in terms of the legal requirements, but you shouldn't stay there. You should have more detailed legal employee contracts where you define very clearly the job description, although, of course, we all know that this job description is always loosely interpreted. And of course, especially in a new startup, everything is expected by everyone. But regardless of that, try to be as descriptive as possible. Include the financials, not only the remuneration of the employees or their salaries, but also their bonuses, if they will get any, when they're going to get any, how they are going to get paid for that. Any time off that they could have, and very important, how you will protect your intellectual company. This also your intellectual property, and this also includes, of course, non-competition and restraint clauses. So if an employee decides to leave your company after maybe a year, is he allowed to go to your competitor? How do you stop that? How are you protected from this? Because even if he doesn't or she doesn't take any intellectual property with them, they will have some know-how that may damage your chances in the competition. You should also include any company policies or any termination clauses, so you're always free to lay off some employees, especially if they don't perform or if they have a bad behavior. So you should be very careful in defining that into their employee contract so that you are legal proof. And now we go to the financial aspects of your application. There are some numbers that you need to address. First of all, how you will finance the success of your project, how you're going to find money to implement whatever you're suggesting. Of course, the fund will be one of the main sources of finance for the project that you are suggesting, but you have to go beyond that. And if you want to be able to convince investors to invest in your company, especially if you're going for the blended finance, then you need to have a very detailed and clear company ownership and capital structure. So who owns the company, which is also very important to identify if your company is an SME, as I mentioned earlier, and how is your capital structure? How much money you may have in debt, how much is your equity, what are your assets, and how you're going to use them to the best use. And then, and only then, you can go and explain the funding and growth strategies. So this is how you plan to overcome the challenges that you have and develop the service or the solution or the product that you are going to work on. How are you going to optimize the revenue? What are the assumptions for that revenue? And how is your market penetration and development? Of course, you have already described that into probably in other sections of the proposal, but make sure that you justify in your financial plans, all the assumptions that you have made, because obviously you made some assumptions. You say that the market has that size, and I believe that I can get this segment. Why? Why do you believe that you get this segment? And you should make sure that you disclose all current funds that you have, or even discussions with public or other private investors that can affect the decision of this fund. So if you are already into negotiations, let's say with a private investor, make sure you disclaim it. Otherwise, you risk the possibility that the commission finds out that later and you are in a breach of some kind of agreement. In terms of financials, you also need to prove how you're going to scale up and how much money you're going to need per work package. So, okay, you want, let's say, 2 million euros for the project that you are suggesting, and you have a work breakdown structure. You know what you want to do, and you describe it very eloquently, but you also need to split the amount that you are requesting into these work packages, and try to put a price tag next to every task or every action excuse me, that you are suggesting. Then you need to compile a profit and loss account for the next 3 years. And the profit and loss account is a simple statement, a financial report, a summary of your company revenues, expenses, profits and losses over a given period of time. So for the next 3 years, what you expect, how much money you expect to earn, how much you expect your revenue that will be, and how much the costs. A word of advice here, don't try to prove that you will break even, let's say, in 6 months, and after that it's all profits. This is not realistic. Try to be realistic as much realistic as possible. Try to be precise. If you already have some investment components, mention them. It's good to know that you already have some kind of funding, either from private investors or even from some other funds, from national programs, or you are bootstrapping. The employees have agreed to fund the company, or the owners will fund the company. So make sure that you can prove, you can justify how you will find this money, and how the money that you are requesting from the EIC Accelerator will fit into this financial plan. Then we go to the intellectual property, which is also a very important component. As I said, it's linked mainly with the legal components of the company, because at the end of the day, you need some legal tools to make sure that you protect your property, your intellectual property. But more often than not, people stay into patents and discuss about patents and forget there is a whole toolkit of available instruments, available strategies that you can use to protect your intellectual property. In fact, patents are just a part of this toolkit, and they are often quite difficult to get, and they need a lot of money. They need a lot of investment in terms of time, a lot of commitment. You need to find the patent attorneys, you need to work with them very carefully, and they can always be disputed in the court. So unless you are working in something that is really patentable, either a brand new biomedicine or a really novel component of a machine, maybe you should consider one of the other paths. And in this very nice diagram, you can see where you start and where you finish in terms of all these IP tools. Now, why IP is important? Because it's your ideas, it is your work, it is your business advantage, and above all, it is a very valuable asset that must be protected. Why it must be protected? Because it can be traded. So you need to have an IP strategy, even if this IP strategy does not involve any patent at all. You need to have this strategy. And intellectual property rights, basically, it's a right. So it is something that will grant you a legal limited monopoly. So if you have it, especially with patents or with a trademark, you are entitled, and only you, to use, let's say, that trademark. Or if it is a patent, you are the only one entitled to use that invention. And there are always limitations in time, in territory, and scope. So you cannot have such a wide scope as to cover the whole world, for instance, unless, of course, you go jurisdiction by jurisdiction. But it's a tool that you can use to protect your inventions, to protect your intellectual property in the areas that interest you. Now, anyone who violates these IP rights is called an infringer, and you, as the owner, as the rights holder, you can bring legal action to them. That's not easy. It's easier said than done. So you have your patent, you have your trademark, and you realize that an obscure Chinese company is using the same designs which they stole from your website, or they did some reverse engineering and they are using the same ideas into a device that they. What do? you can only litigate against them. You have to move legally, you have to hire lawyers, you have to take them to the court. That is expensive. Of course, you have to do that, but be sure that it will cost you money. You can also, as the rights holder, as the owner of these rights, you can transfer your rights. So you can either sell them or license them to another company, to another representative in another country to perform these tasks for you. Or you can waive your rights. You can say that I will not protect my intellectual property. I will contribute it to open science. I will leave it free for others to use it, to elaborate on it, to use it for further inventions. In collaborative projects and in a lot of R&I frameworks, we use what we call the access rights, and these are the background IP and foreground IP. So these terms are good for you to remember. The background IP is whatever you bring to a project. So maybe you participate also in a collaborative project, or maybe you have you are working with another company. So whatever you bring in the project is the background IP. It's yours, but you agree to use it for the benefit of the project. Whatever you develop during the project, it is the foreground IP, and this is only yours. And you can offer it, you can give it to others, but only through an IP protection scheme that you will define. And these IP protection schemes, these IP rights can be the copyright, patent, trademark, and industrial design, trade secrets, and of course, we already said about patents. I will leave patents at the end because they are most complicated and most difficult to achieve. Remember that protection is still in the national level rather than in the EU. That goes for patents. But you can apply to the European Patent Office, but these patents will need to be validated by the national patent office. So the European Patent Office will send your application to the national patent offices, and they will do the necessary cross-checks to see if you are infringing somebody else's patent and if your patent can be granted to that particular country. For industrial designs, for trademarks, we have the EU IPO, European Union Intellectual Property Office, where you can register your trademarks and industrial design, and these will have these will be valid across Europe. Patent rights, which is, as I said, that are the most complicated and the most elaborate, and it takes them a lot of time to create and build, basically give to the patent holder these five rights. So you have an idea of, let's say, a photographic camera. This image is for the actual photographic camera. It's part of the patent that was submitted in 1887, and you need to describe very in a lot of detail what this will do. And once you get the patent, then you will be able to produce, to make this device. You will be able to advertise it. You will be able to sell it to others, the patent itself, because the patent will give you the rights, so you are selling the rights. And you will be able to import into protected territory. So if you get a patent, let's say for the United States, then you will be able to import your invention, your idea into the United States, even though it is not developed there. And of course, you will be able to store it. Remember again that all these are limited by time, by territory, and scope. I believe patents, most of the patents have an expiration date of 25 years. And then again, patent owners can assign, they can transfer, and they can license their patents to others. Copyright is something much easier. It is by default. So if you can prove that you have the copyright, then then you are already protected. You don't need to register it anywhere. And it's it is mainly used for, it's more accustomed for artistic uses. So writers, artists, music composers, television creators, they have their own copyrights to their creations. It does not extend to ideas, only to expression of thought. So if you have an idea of the book, you cannot copyright this idea. You need to write the book, and then this book is your copyright. There's no need for registration, as I already said, and there are some type of rights where you can require a financial reward. So if anybody would like to reproduce your creations or distribute or use them for creating something new, what we call derivative. So they can get, they can ask your approval, and you can define a financial reward for that. It can be part of a negotiation, or it can be just moral attribution. So I don't want any money. I just want fame. I want recognition, and we now have Creative Commons licenses, which is a fantastic project. They have come up with a number of uses, and the adequate insignia, the signs that you can use in your copyright or even in your the software development code that the software code that you may create. And you can use these designs, these signs, to indicate what you allow others to do with your creation. So you will probably see that into photographs, into any artistic creations, and based on the sign that you're seeing, you are allowed to do a certain number of things. In the best case, you are free to use it as you see fit. In the worst, it's copyrighted, it's fully copyrighted, and you need to go back to the creator to ask for permission. And the duration is usually 50 years after the creator's death. Trademarks are what we all understand. So we have a logo. It can be a figure. It can be a combination. It can be a color code, even a sound or a specific audio signal. For instance, when you listen to the television or the radio, you can hear a distinctive signal at the beginning. When you go to Netflix, for instance, you hear a sound. This is an audio trademark. This is protected. You cannot use it. They are used to identify certain goods and services. They can consist of word combination, abbreviation, names, drawings, 3D shapes, colors, music, sounds, whatever you think you find appropriate. They need to be distinctive, so not something that you can hear and there. And they can be collective, so a trademark can also be used by all members of organizations. So Microsoft professionals, for instance, they have a trademark and they can use this logo within their profiles, or they can use to confer some certification, the ISO standards, for instance. There is a trademark of ISO, and you can use it if you are certified under a specific standard. That duration is usually 10 years, but it's renewed indefinitely unless something happens and the trademark is no longer in use. That's a nice table of different categories of trademarks. So we have some fanciful trademarks with just a name or an image, or just a name that can suggest something like more generic, like the Band-Aid or aspirin or thermos. It's a matter of designing, and it's a matter of preference. In industrial designs, and this is also something that you can register in the EU IPO. In industrial designs, you are talking about the ornamental or aesthetic aspect of an object, of an article. So it can be a 3D feature, it can be a shape, a pattern, some lines, and we use it in instruments, in watches, in jewelry, in houseware, in electrical appliances, in vehicles, for instance. And it must appeal the eye. Now, this is, of course, something that each one of us will have a different idea of what appeals the eye, but it needs to be something aesthetic, something different than others. So you can protect it through the registration in the country authorized agencies, or you can go to EU IPO, and it usually has a duration of 5 years, and it can be renewed up to 15. EU IPO, just a screenshot from a specific registration process. So this is what you see when you will try to register a trademark, and it will ask you what kind of trademark it is. So you will be able to upload drawings, to upload sounds, to upload the description of the trademark, so you can make sure that you protect any infringement, and you will be able to register it for certain uses. So you cannot register it for everything. You will register it for certain uses. But of course, big companies tend to be very expansionary, and they expand the scope into almost everything. So I cannot create something and name it Coca-Cola, for instance. Trade secrets, it's what you understand. It's confidential business information. You don't certify it. You don't send it into any organization. You just keep it secret, and if it is a trade secret, it is something that provides a competitive edge for your company. So it's something that you should indeed protect. It can be a technique, it can be a formula, it can be even financial data, or even a list of customers. Okay, this is also something that you need to protect, and you protect it through your legal library that we already discussed. So you include confidentiality clauses into your employee contracts, you have non-disclosure agreements, you do whatever it takes to make sure that nobody will leak this information. So how to use intellectual property to make your project to award. Keep in mind that a large amount of R&D is already carried out by the private sector. So we have a lot of patents submitted. We have a lot of intellectual property carried out by the private sector, not so much by the public. The corporates, of course, prefer to protect their intellectual property no matter what. What you need to do, you need to make sure that you are not infringing any of these patents, any of these intellectual property, but you also need to get an idea of what is the competition. And to do that, there are a number of patent databases. I have here those that are completely free for you to use, and they are open to everyone. Even if you do not intend to patent something, you need to make sure that you are not infringing somebody else's patent. Or if you are looking for ideas and if you are looking of things that you can already use, then it's also a good idea to have a look at the patents, because maybe you're trying to work in something that has already been invented. And if you ignore that, OECD says that you neglect 80% of technical information that is already available. Maybe there is a solution out there and you can just take it, and you can save time, you can save effort, and you can use it in your own project. In fact, apart from these patent databases, I would urge you to look at past project results. I don't have it here, but we have it in a lot of our presentations into our help desk. There are plenty of tools for you to look for past project results. There's a results database in the participant portal where you can see results from past projects, and it's a good idea to have a look at them and make sure that you're not infringing, as I said, anyone's intellectual property. But more important than that, maybe something can be useful for you, and maybe you can take it and avoid the hurdle of rediscovering it. So how do you identify, how do you see if you are infringing somebody's intellectual property? You need to conduct a process that it's called freedom to operate. And this is what we call the ability to use your technology without infringing another's intellectual property. So make sure that what you are suggesting is not somebody else's. And the FTO searches are done into patent databases, like the ones I already showed you, or you can go to a patent attorney. Sorry, you can work with a patent attorney, and you can look into some paid services, and it's not, especially if you plan to submit a patent, then you need to do that at the very early stages of the project, and you need a more elaborate and detailed analysis through the records that we can find in the databases, the claims, the countries of interest, if there are any assets. So you need to do this, you need to work on these projects, on this process early on. The freedom to operate will reveal if there are already some patents that limit your freedom to operate. So if you find something there, then you cannot use it. You can only go back to the owners of this patent and purchase it, or licensing it, or cross-licensing it, or find a collaboration with them that it will allow you to use whatever you need. This is something that you need to think and determine possible solutions, possible costs. Ideally, before you submit your proposal, because after that it may be too late, even if your proposal is successful. So if you believe that your idea is patent material, or it is something that should be protected in a stricter way, not just under trade secrets, then you need to do the freedom to operate. The freedom to operate, actually, it's a process that you need to do regardless if you plan to submit a patent or not, because you need to control if what you have in mind will infringe somebody else's patent. So it is something that should be included into your state-of-the-art research when you try to identify the state-of-the-art and see where you fit in with your invention or with your solution. That's all from my side. I'm happy to respond to any questions. I don't know if we have any.
Not at the moment, no. The only question we had was, is it possible to apply for a full application without making the initial application? The answer is no. There are some special circumstances, but no. We're running well over schedule, so can we quickly move on to Sanem? Hello, Sanem. Let's hear from Sanem about the good practices she spotted as an evaluator of many of these applications.
Thank you, Philip. Dear participants, it's very nice to have you all. And I've been serving to European Commission for moreover than 10 years and in many different programs, and EIC Accelerator program is one of them. And so I will try to reflect my accumulated experience and try to fill the gaps that's been left by Odysseas, Adamantios, and Philip as best as I can. So I will start sharing my screen, and yes, I assume you're now seeing, yes. So I know that we're behind schedule, so I'll be as quick as I can. First, we need to understand EIC Accelerator, what it's about and what it's not about. I tried to customize this presentation to Turkish SMEs, which are planning to submit an application to EIC Accelerator, because we have, as I saw many projects for more than 10 years, we have some specific cases, we have some specific limitations and lack of approaches and perspectives. So I try to be concentrating on them. As you know, Turkey is a very fruitful region, which hosts many programs of grants and other type of specific incentives. So it's boosts our market approach, but sometimes it also has an adverse effect on us. So I will try to reflect more on this. So EIC Accelerator has an ambition to select great ideas and innovation cases that has sustainable and scalable market potential. And also this program seeks for committed and tenacious innovators. And also the European Union mobilizes this EIC support to help companies become and real and issue substantial impact for the benefit of Europe and Europeans. So it's not a funding program for research projects, so we should keep it in our minds always to position ourselves in a most competitive environment like EIC Accelerator. So first, Adamantios and Philip and Odysseas reflected their insights on so many things, and I will try to make a explanation about showing you what what you have some shortages in the proposal preparation step, because we always concentrate on telling our case, and we forget that how brain is actually operating. Because when a piece of information comes to us, we try to make a comparison on that. We try to understand it by making a benchmark of what it is and what it's not. So we can position our proposals in a very competitive edge by telling the story the other way around. What I mean by that is we need to provide details on why we are not targeting another customer segment, why we are not using that channel to approach the market, why we are not considering another country for market launch, or why we have not identified that sector as our beachhead, or why we have not determined that actor as a strategic partner, not an option for us, and we are not reaching to customers by direct sales, instead we are using other sales methods, or why in our case using distributors is not a good idea. So please, while telling your story, because this is actually a storytelling, and try to make your case very strongly grounded by telling why you didn't select these kind of things, and why you position your proposal as structured in your EIC Accelerator proposal. So this is important, and please keep in mind that the evaluators are not always the subject matter experts. You know, these evaluators are being selected as business model experts who are not specialized in any certain topic, or they might have thematic expertise, but they couldn't be as good as you. So please telling them by the universe you are selecting as your playground for your business case. First tell about, mention the universe, what's been going around, and then concentrate on the galaxy you're operating, and then start telling the business model. So as I told before, this is a storytelling. You should start by framing all the playgrounds you're going to operate in, and try to draw this image in front of their very eyes, and then make them more inclined to your approach and understand you properly. And you should convey your value proposition very clearly. And there are some specific aspects which we most of the time miss. We should keep in our mind that there is a difference between wants, needs, and interests. So market responds according to this difference. And in order to make a good value proposition, we need to understand what kind of solution we are offering to a specific kind of problem. And if it's a must-have, or it's a nice-to-have. If it's a nice-to-have, I mean, it's wants or interests, then we couldn't be as successful as generating revenue from a large mainstream market. But if it's a must-have for a specific customer group, then it's always easier to ground our thesis or business model, and then show the evaluators that we need a higher chances of market success with our business model. So this is important. And value proposition, we need to make very open, very clear claims on why people should buy our solution. And it's, of course, not because of the technology we are using or developing. However, it's as fancy as it can be, or not for the features our product has. Invest their money on our product or our solution because their perceived benefits. So it's important, and it's different from the technology or the features. So please concentrate on what your real value is, and try to be specific about the value you're offering to the market. For example, as value propositions, we can frame it like mobility. We might be offering extended mobility, or faster, or biodegradable, or easier to access, or cheaper. And please be aware that this should be a very tricky thing to use as our value proposition, because then if we offer a cheaper version of an existing product in the market, there is a good probability that we might be racing to the bottom with the rivals, with the competitors in the market. So if you can use, yes, cheaper as a value proposition, but try to stick with other type of values if you have your product or solution have, instead of being cheap. And for example, breathability might be another one, and durability, or maybe it shortens the time needed for something, and maybe you can be better in something or easier to use like this. And another topic, you need to show the evaluators a flawless value chain analysis, because when you position your business model in a specific value chain, you need to be understanding every actor in that value chain in order to be successful in the market. And if you miss one, the chain gets broken, and then you most probably be unsuccessful. So you need to compensate each entity in the value chain in order to sustain your business properly. So tell them what's their motive to be a part of this value chain, and how you will sustain this attractiveness in this value chain to sustain the presence of that actor. For example, maybe you might be offering a commission, or maybe a percentage from the sales price, or discounted mass purchase maybe, or discounted pre-purchase like this. So in your business model should include some very clear and understandable motives for the actors you need to be in touch within the value chain in order to sustain your business in that specific market. And you need to show the evaluators that you're good with numbers and you did your homework well. If you have some existing revenue, is really nice. Show them the traction. Or your projection should be as credible as enough, and you need to have a convincing break-even point and return on investment. Most of the cases, it's well overestimated, and as evaluators we already developed some muscles to understand this. We might not be experts or full experts in every sector, but while reading and make a Google search, in a short time you can get some expertise and understand if it's overestimated or not. So your projection should be credible enough to convince them. And also show them that not only financial return can be expected as a result of your business activities, you also have some other impacts, such as unemployment or other type of, for example, sustainable development goals, or other trends that European Commission is now seeking for better positions. And also some cross-cutting issues are important. If you also have a substantial effect on these cross-cutting issues like intersectionality or other type of things, then show them. And of course, your commercialization plan should be aligned with your financial plan, and they should go in hand in hand. So please work them in a good quality dough to convince regulators in your position. For example, most of the time we see that the list price always includes this cost of goods and profits and some other operational expenses, and then plus R&D expenses. But it's most of the time not the case when you operate in a real environment. There is a master distributor or some distributors afterwards, and there is a reseller. And for your list price should be like this instead of this. So, and another thing, you should show not only that you know how to get customers in the first hand, but also you have some clear and meaningful strategies on how to grow and keep them. You know, very healthy customer development strategy includes these three parts: getting, growing, and keeping. If one chain gets broken, then your business is doomed. So please do not put overemphasis on getting customer, this market launch. We always concentrate on this market launch, but EIC Accelerator want to see us some strategies, some meaningful plans on how to scale on the market and concretize our presence in the market, because there are many players and there are some dominators in the market, and we're an SME, and we need to make a very flawless strategy. We need to have a very flawless strategy on market penetration as well as market scale, and keep our presence at this level. So in order to be able to get, grow, and keep customers, we need to understand first who they are, their demographic, psychographic approaches, or sociocultural background, or other type of important characteristics, and what's their role in the society, what's their buying patterns, and what motivates them, or who or what influences them. So please put these very essential, critical, and customized information according to your business plan in your proposal. Because if you do this, the evaluators will think that, okay, yes, they're well aware of their market and customer dynamics, and they also understood the competitive dynamics well and positioned their products or services or solutions very fit for purpose. And then, yes, they should be supported. And sometimes we miss the two fits, you know, for a good, sustainable business model, viable business model, we need to ensure that both fits are guaranteed. The first one is problem solution fit. Most of the time we don't have a problem with that. We are very good as Turkish SMEs. We're very good to offer a good solution for a specific kind of problem, but in many cases we lack flawless or good solution market fits. What I mean by that is not every solution might be appropriate for the markets you're heading for. For example, if you are trying to measure the glucose level with contact lenses, and if you're heading for the children as your beachhead market, then you most possibly might have not this good solution market fit, because children are not cannot use these contact lenses. So please understand this and show the evaluators that you also, with this business model, have perfect solution market fit. You're not missing something, some very critical issue. Okay, and as Odysseus had a very large session on that, so I'm going to skip this, but I'm going to show this very clear message. So you need
sorry
to have...
sorry to interrupt, Sanem. Could you stop
Yes,
moving the microphone around so much it interrupts the sound?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for informing me. Yeah, I will be as static as I can. Okay, so as you can see, you need to have a flawless and visionary IPR strategy. And most of the time, Turkish SMEs have an inclination on patenting. But you know that, we should know that there is a wide tool set for proper intellectual property rights protection. Sometimes we can publish our results, or sometimes we call it defensive publishing. So it's also a strategy we can pursue on. Or sometimes we need to keep trade secret. We need to keep our specific proprietary information as trade secrets. And sometimes we need to patent. So patenting is not a cool option for every case. So please use this wisely. And risk management, I would like to tell, but we always position risk management as the one of the things we should be taking care of in the end, but it's not, because it's very important, because we are a startup most of the case and introducing a business model most of the time heading for a not so established markets. So risk management is being considered as one of the important criteria in EIC Accelerator. So we need to come up with a very flawless risk management strategy. First, we need to identify the risks in multiple domains, not only technical, but operational or financial, or maybe in some administrative ones. And we need to assess the risk, and we need to make this assessment in according to the 3 criteria. What's the impact if the risk occurs, and what might be the frequency, and what might be the probability of its being occurred at the first hand. So, and then we need to develop some strategies to manage the risk properly. For example, reasonable strategies might involve accepting the risk, or avoiding the risk, or transferring the risk to a third party, or mitigating the risk, or exploiting the risk as an opportunity, not a threat. And team is one of the most critical things we most of the time miss, because in some cultures, for example, if we were to be in Finland, we wouldn't be discussing this, but team culture is very important aspect that we need to improve in Turkey. So we need to show the evaluators that we gather around some individuals with complementary skills and know-how, and we put these individuals very good task ability fit. And we need to show that the team, every individual of this team has high motivation to be a part of this business we're proposing. And also we need to have a balance between covering the competencies. We shouldn't have, we're not expected to cover all the things in-house. If it's not the core of the business, we might be outsourcing things. And by telling this, we also provide a meaningful in-house outsource strategy. So as you see this is the impossible trinity. This is called the impossible trinity. So we need to make an analysis on this. For example, we need to be fast and good, then we need to pay for the quality. We need to increase the money. Or maybe fast and cheap, then the quality lowers as a result. Or we need to be both cheap and good, then we can't be fast enough. So we need to hold this in our position, in our minds, and maybe we might outsource some actions, some activities to better optimize this impossible trinity. And yes, as a last thing, we shouldn't be hiding the truth, because as I said before, evaluators just develop some muscles in understanding the truth and what's been on hiding before them. So if the shortcomings we are inclined to be hiding are very critical things, we should be proposing, we should come up with a solution just before we are preparing this application. And if it's not very critical, if it's a manageable thing, then we should be frank. We should be as open as we could be, and try to offer some meaningful strategy to the evaluators. Yes, we know that blah, blah, blah, but we're planning to do this. So it's more sympathetical to be frank and then convince the evaluators to take side with your position and be not so harsh as expected. So I would be happy to answer any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanem. A lot of very useful stuff there. As it's an informative session rather than a sort of two-way thing, we're not getting the questions coming in, but perhaps people are rather shy. But just picking up from the last three presentations, from Diamantis, the lack of flow between topics. This is often because of different authors, and there isn't enough time to pull it all together. And we see very different writing styles, repetition of information, even worse, contradiction sometimes in terms of numbers and descriptions. So important that somebody, as he said, and indeed as I said, is in charge of the whole thing and leaves enough time to pull it all together. Also the point on counting on what you know, this also shows the gaps in what you don't know. So whilst it can impress that you know a lot about the technical side, it can show that you have gaps in your commercial side. And the third thing to me was taking an external view, asking someone to have a look at the application or the presentation and give a view. Not a family or friend, because they won't want to insult, but someone who would have a valid opinion of what you're doing. From Odysseus, again, many of the requirements are what an investor would look for, and you should ask yourself already, how will the project be financed? What's the ownership? Who owns the IP? And making sure that assumptions are funded. He also made the point I fully agree with. Patent protection is great in principle, but it's very difficult to defend in practice, especially if the person that you're defending, if the offender, shall we say, is in another country with perhaps weaker legal systems. And also he mentioned the freedom to operate, absolutely important in accelerator projects, because any investor is going to want to know whether the idea or the company is easily transferable. If there are 10 owners of IP with equal shares and they disagree, it's never going to be transferred anywhere else, and the investor may not get their investment back. finally, Sanem, I love this idea that you tell the story the other way round. A great idea, and like all great ideas, it's so obvious when you think about it, but not at the time. This idea of storytelling as well, make it easier for the evaluators to read and understand. And finally, the must-have versus nice-to-have. I was thinking of an example. The COVID-19 vaccine was a must-have, but easier ways of testing was a nice-to-have, and that might draw the distinction. I also love the fast, good, cheap trinity, which I think a lot of marketing people should take on board. Does anyone? I mean, these are the points I picked up. Any of you have anything to add to those?
Not from my side.
Okay, Odysseus?
I think to stress again the importance of putting a good team in the beginning of the process. And people tend to ignore these rather sometimes boring or difficult aspects of putting together a good legal agreement or putting together a solid plan, because they have so much faith in their idea, but that they believe that nothing else matters. I think it matters, and you will avoid a lot of problems in the later on if you put together a solid legal and financial toolkit that will drive you through the process.
Yeah, and to support that, if a project goes through to the jury panel, probably 4 of the 6 people there will be potential investors or business people, and
Yes.
these are areas they will concentrate on because it's their field of knowledge and perhaps not the technical aspect. So, yeah. Adamantios, any comments?
No, last comment only about the team aspect. The thing is that it's not a single purpose team. The people who may be involved in the preparation of this stage 2 application will also be involved in the future for some other relevant opportunity, which means that even if the stage 2 application may have a high risk that it will fail, still the output of this process, the content that it will be created during this process, is of good value for any other future occasion for this company or for this team of people. So it's all worth to dedicate time, even if someone knows that the chances might be not looking good. On the other hand, the chances may increase if the team commits, and this is a gradual thing. So I understand there that the team, that the excellent team that is behind the Turkey Horizon project, it was not something that was the result of a one-day gathering of all of you. It took some time that you reached this level of proficiency and excellence. So this is the same here. The only problem here is that the cutoff day for reaching this point may be only 5 or 6 months ahead of us. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, good point. I may lend you that €2,000 because that was to be my final point, but there we are. Any comment from you, Tariq? I think Tariq may have had to go to another meeting. We are overrunning. I do apologize for that. So finally for me, just 2 points, one of which has already been made. This is funding to commercialize. It's not a research grant. Get out of your head that you're applying for a research grant. That may be your working history, but this is very different. If you can't think that way, find someone who can help you do that. All of this seems very bureaucratic. It is public money, and there's always bureaucracy surrounding the use of public money. As a business, you should have the answers to most of these questions anyway, if you're working in a commercial environment, and get those answers before you even think of applying, because it's absolutely important. And as Adamantios rightly says, it's good business practice anyway to go through this process. It will make you a stronger business and perhaps be able to attract funding from other sources. than the European Commission. Having said that, they're all individual applications who stand in their own right. And if you have a really clever, innovative project, it will get through. So, right, we still have no questions. So at this point, I'd like to thank all our speakers for some very useful input. Apologies for overrunning rather, but I'm sure you'll think it was worth it. I'd like to say goodbye, and I'm sure the team would too, and hand over to Kemal to close the event. So goodbye for now.
Thank you very much, Philippe, for giving the floor. Now I'm going to continue in Turkish. Ben de bütün katılımcılarımıza çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Hem projemizin son webinarında bizlerle yoğun gündemlerine rağmen yer aldıkları için. Hiç merak etmesin kimse, herkesle sunumları paylaşıyor olacağız. Gün içerisinde ayrıca yine değerlendirme formumuzu iletiyor olacağız. E-posta yoluyla bütün kayıt gösteren katılımcılarımızla prezentasyonlar paylaşılıyor olacaktır. Ayrıca yayını bugün biraz daha soru aldık. Bir 10 dakika daha açık bırakıp eğer sorularınız varsa daha sonradan aklınıza gelecek sorular da bunlara dair tabii ki açık tutmayı planlıyoruz. Herkese gerçekten çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Özellikle TÜBİTAK tarafına, Tarık Beylere, Merve Hanımlara, bizlere bu 11 webinarda yönlendirici oldukları için, yine projemizin kilit uzmanlarına, yine yerli Türkiye'den Sanem hocamıza çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Bir daha sonraki etkinliğimizde umuyoruz ki seneye görüşmek dileğiyle. Herkese iyi çalışmalar diliyoruz.